Israel is rejecting what it calls false allegations in the Amnesty report.
Instead of seeking the truth, Amnesty echoes the same lies shared by terrorist organizations. 5 minutes of serious examination would be enough to know that the so-called facts in the report published by Amnesty this week are delusional and disconnected from reality.
Israeli Foreign Minister Yair Lapid charging that Amnesty doesn't call Syria, Iran, or other corrupt and murderous regimes apartheid states.
I hate to use the argument that if Israel wasn't a Jewish state, no one at Amnesty would dare make such a claim against it. But in this case, there's simply no other explanation.
The report is entitled Israel's Apartheid Against Palestinians, Cruel System of Domination and Crime Against Humanity. It says, we found that Israel's cruel policies of segregation, dispossession, and exclusion across all territories under its control clearly amount to apartheid. Amnesty's executive summary also says Israel has established and maintained an institutionalized regime of oppression and domination of the Palestinian population for the benefit of Jewish Israelis, wherever it has exercised control over Palestinian lives since 1948. A Wall Street Journal editorial calls it, quote, a libel that distorts history. Israel was founded in the wake of the Holocaust with broad international support. The report is a denunciation of the very existence of Israel as a refuge for the Jewish people. The editorial goes on to say that Amnesty doesn't explain why Israel has to fight like it does to survive. It briefly mentions Hamas shooting rockets at Israel, but then denounces Israel defending itself. The report also calls on other nations to stop selling weapons to Israel. Amnesty International says it's using the international definition of apartheid, but apartheid typically refers to the system of racial separation that gave white superiority over blacks in South Africa until the early 1990s. Israeli attorney Ian Hertzberg from the NGO Monitor says the report is aimed at questioning the legitimacy of Israel's existence.
The charge is powerful because it is an easy way to essentialize and exploit anti-Semitic tropes to transform the conflict into one of disputed lands and Arab rejection of Jewish presence in the Middle East to one of Jewish racism.
Israeli attorney David Benjamin grew up in South Africa. He says there's no comparison.
I was certainly a witness to the iniquities of that terrible system. And let me be absolutely clear, I've been living in Israel for the last 30-odd years, and there is absolutely nothing in common between the system of apartheid that applied in the old South Africa and the current situation in Israel.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.